Hi there, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Work Tips Pro. This is where we help professionals like you stand out among your peers. My name is Mukhtar, and today we're going to be doing things a bit differently. We have a special guest. Now, I'm a bit nervous interviewing this special guest because I really like his work. His name is Brenden, and Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk, a YouTube channel that he started to help people with public speaking and communication. If you've seen our other videos here on Work Tips Pro, you know that communication, public speaking, that's a big focus here because I think that this is one of the quickest ways and the easiest ways to really stand out at work. So without further ado, let me welcome Brenden. Brenden, how you doing?
Very good, Mukhtar. How about yourself, man?
Can't complain, can't complain. Life is good, but life is busy. Yeah, so before we get started, let me just say that I really love your YouTube channel and congratulations on hitting the 10K mark. I think you have over 10,000 subscribers, close to 11,000 now. Is that correct?
Yeah, man, doing our best. Appreciate it.
Nice.
Thanks so much.
Did you celebrate in any way?
Not really. I think we just ordered junk food, but for the 100K, we have a big party planned. So hopefully,
Nice.
hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. Yeah, I'll be watching for that. So let's delve right in, Brenden. So I, I guess I'll start with trying to know more about you. What's your story? How did you get into public speaking?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So when I was 19, I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing rugby or football or something else. I, surprisingly, did presentations competitively. So for 3 years, not only was I presenting, I was presenting a lot, talking three, four, 500 times. That's why I built my ability to speak. And then when I went to work for corporate, I worked as a consultant for IBM for 2 years. I realized I learned so much from my university days that I got so like almost accidentally good at the ability to coach others on how to speak. So I started a YouTube channel called MasterTalk because I realized no one was teaching that stuff for free. So let's say you're someone who wants to work on your communication, you can't really afford a speech coach like me or another person in my industry. There's not much you can do. And a lot of the advice that was being shared is fairly general. Things like, well, you should like be yourself or like step into your purpose and picture everyone in their underwear. I was like, that is not layered in practicality. So I started making videos in my mother's basement. One thing led to another, and here we are today.
Nice, nice. Wow, I really like that. It's kind of interesting that you actually started early because just like you mentioned, it's something that many people are not taught, right? And there's a lot of advice out there, and I'm gonna delve into that a bit more. But yeah, there's a lot of advice out there. A lot of the advice, is quite conflicting. Speaking of lots of advice out there, Brenden, what would you say is one thing that can really take your public speaking to the next level?
I would say the one that comes to mind right away is the random word exercise. So the random word exercise is super simple. All you do, there's a bunch of things you can do. That's probably the easy way to start for people, where you pick one random word, lights, camera, doorknob, basement, wife, anything, and you make a presentation out of thin air. And what this does, especially in the professional setting, is most of us are just scared to give our corporate presentations that we have a lot of expertise in. So if you start talking about avocados or lights, all these things, now you're practicing how to present aspects or topics that you have zero expertise in.
Hmm.
And it's that leverage that allows you to then communicate really effectively in
Hmm.
presentations in different settings. And that's the magic. And I'm happy to demonstrate this as well if you'd like. But the idea is simple. You can practice this on your own, do it 5 times a day, 5 minutes a day. And in a year, you'll have done it over 1,000 times.
Nice. No, I really like that because it helps with speaking impromptu because that's a lot of that's the kind of situation that you're going to find yourself in a lot in the corporate world. Right? You're in a meeting, you get asked a question. How do you respond concisely? How do you respond, coherently? So yeah, if you don't mind, can we do an exercise if that's okay
Yeah,
with you?
yeah, I'm used to it. Give me a word and I'll demonstrate.
All right, I would say tomatoes?
Sure. I woke up one morning, and as I saw my mother tending to our little garden in our little home, couldn't but notice the ripe, juicy red tomatoes that were in the garden. What's fascinating about tomatoes is that they stand out from the pack. They're not your potatoes, they're not your eggplants, or other types of vegetables. They stand out. They make a mark. They allow you to focus on the prize. And what's amazing about tomatoes is not just the color, the vibrancy, that incredible fruit, not vegetable, is that it can be used in different ways. You can create tomato sauce and make an incredible pasta. You can bite right into it as a treat. And you can use it as seasoning, sauces, or even as a main dish, or just slice it off and put it into your sandwich. So the next time that you go to your grocery store, the next time you walk to buy things, don't hesitate to get the tomato, because the tomato is a basic essential that will allow you to increase the vibrancy of not your meals, but also your life. Anyways, the point I want to drive here with this exercise, don't compare yourself to me. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you, I always like to say this after I do it. I've done this exercise, Mukhtar, 3,000 times. I'm not exaggerating it. Not 3 times, not 300, 3,000 times.
Wow.
But the point I want to drive here is anyone can do it 3,000 times. Right? It's not like I spend 16 hours a day just doing boat and light. And no, it's I do it 5 times a day. Right? If you do I just did it once. And I do this in every podcast I'm on. And then for a year, you'll have done it like 1,500 times. But since I've been practicing for 5 years, it makes sense that I've done it 3,000 times.
Wow. And you still do it every day today?
No, I don't. I just do it on podcast appearances.
Oh, nice. I guess, yeah, you have more experience, doing it on podcast live. But yeah, no, that's really fascinating. By the way, I really like that exercise. And I recall doing something similar in the past. I was a while ago, I was having problems with just being coherent in meetings, right? And what I would do is that I went online, looked for a list of random impromptu speaking topics, and every morning I would just pick a number randomly and then just speak on the topic for about 2 minutes, right? And it really just helps you, think on the fly, be coherent, and try to be as concise as possible. So I really like that exercise. So I guess maybe what I need to do is now to do that 5 times a day. I think that is a lot, doing it. But hopefully that should help you, really hone that skill. Thanks for sharing that. So moving on to the next, to another question. What would you say are some common misconceptions when it comes to trying to be better at public speaking? Because I know you do a lot of coaching. So what would you say is that a common mistake that people make, or a common myth about trying to get better, when it comes to public speaking?
Yeah, there's a couple that stand out. I would say the first one is that I always need to practice with somebody. That's not true. I just did, even if you weren't there, Mukhtar, I always do the random word exercise on my own. That's a super easy way for you to practice. Another piece to break the myth is you can easily record yourself doing a video and send it to your friends for feedback. There's always a way to practice on your own. Don't use groups as an excuse not to do it. That's probably the biggest myth I hear. The second one is around introversion versus extroversion. So introverts that I talk to think that they can't be great communicators, and that is the biggest lie, right? Not the lie, but wrong. I don't think it's correct. I'll tell you what. Let's take theater. Theater, when you go and like do a play or whatever.
Yeah.
Can we safely say that 100% of every single person in theater in the world is an extrovert?
No.
I don't think so. That's impossible statistically. There has to be 20%, 30%. I don't know what the number is. It's more than 0 that are amazing at theater and that are introverts. How is that possible? And that's the point. There's a bunch of great communicators who are introverts. I'm more extroverted, and I'm not going to lie about it. But I will say is Susan Cain, Brene Brown, Seth
Mm.
Godin, or
Mm.
excellent example, Simon Sinek, or
Mm.
excellent examples of introverts who are exceptional communicators. So my advice is follow the introverts that you admire, and that will give you that will break that limiting belief and allow you to communicate your ideas effectively with the world.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I know that some of my favorite comedians are actually introverts, right? And the first time I actually found out about that, I was watching an interview of one of my favorite comedians, and he was so shy. But when he's performing, he is opposite, right? And there's some performers like that as well. When you see them doing interviews, it's like, two different people. So yeah, no, that's really good advice. Thanks for sharing that. What are your thoughts on using filler words, right? So I've heard the advice that just get rid of filler words. And just for those of you that don't know, filler words are words like so you sort of say these words when you're trying to gather your thoughts. So Brenden, what would you say? I would just like to hear your thoughts. What do you think about filler words? Because some very good communicators I know use filler words and they are still effective in how they communicate. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So filler words, what I would say is the best way to tackle filler words is to replace them with pauses. So instead of saying, I like this banana, you say, I like banana. That's a big difference, right? Filler words without filler words. So the best way to practice this is to practice what I call long pauses and stares. Most of us are very uncomfortable with pausing for short periods of time. And the reason is because whenever we pause, we get afraid that the person on the other side thinks we don't know what we're talking about. Well, Brenden, if I pause for 3 seconds, won't Mutkar think I don't know what I'm saying? And that's not true at all from the way that I'm pausing right now. So how do we fix this? We fix this by understanding the following. The best speakers in the world share one thing in common, and it's a secret we don't tell anyone. The secret is we can pause forever without ever making it feel awkward. Well, obviously we don't have forever, so I didn't want to pause for too long there. But in my actual workshops with Gar, I would pause for 3 to 5 minutes and just stare at them. It's super uncomfortable for everybody. Not for me though, right? But the reason it's not uncomfortable for me is not because I was born a great speaker. It's because I worked on it. So the first time, let's say me and you did this drill, I'd go, it's really hard. But after you get to 3 to 5 minutes, you start to develop this confidence. So the next time you're speaking and you're about to say you're going to say nothing instead.
So how do you practice? How do you put that into practice? Like staring and not saying anything at someone for 3 to 5 minutes.
Good question. So the way that you practice this is, so ideally you do this with a partner, but you don't have to. So let's say me and you are doing this drill together and you're giving a speech. Every time I point at you like this, you have to do this. You have to stop talking until I take the finger back. So let's say we're both presenting, you're talking, do this. You have to literally do this and say nothing. And then when I put the finger back, you keep going. So that's the way you practice this.
And when you're doing that, when you keep quiet, you're maintaining eye contact?
Yes, correct.
Oh my goodness. That must
the whole time.
That must feel uncomfortable for 3 to 5 minutes.
Sometimes. You start it easy. So
yeah, and
3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7. But with my top clients, yeah, definitely 3 minutes.
And how long does it take for you to now become comfortable with pauses? Because I can imagine if you're doing 3 to 5 minutes eye contact, not saying anything, then the short pauses would feel just like easy. So how long does it take for them to feel comfortable?
Jeez,
that question
takes
makes sense.
a week, maybe a week. Because I'm crazy. Like most people, like other coaches in my industry, they might do 10 seconds. So it might take those clients or those students maybe a month and a half. But because you know me, I'm a bit more extreme. As you saw from my YouTube channel, I have an answer for every question you could ever ask. But public speaking, I take it to the next level with people who hire me. So it's like a week and a half max.
Yeah.
Max, yeah.
No, that's really really interesting. I should try that exercise as well. Well, lots of exercises to try. So Brenden, now after the pandemic, or let me not say after the pandemic because some people are still dealing with the pandemic now, but the pandemic has changed the way we work, the way many of us work. Many companies are now embracing the hybrid work model, and some companies are going fully remote. Now, I have worked in uh, hybrid type environments, and what I've noticed is that people that are remote. So a hybrid environment is where some people come to the office and other people are remote. So what I've noticed is that people that are remote tend to be forgotten, right? Because they're not doing the FaceTime, and just in-person communication tends to be just a lot better than remote communication. So what advice would you have for people that are remote? How can they be effective communicators in a hybrid work environment or in a remote type work environment?
Absolutely. So here's an easy trick. Let's get started with the easy stuff first. Always keep your eyes on the lens of your camera. And the reason that's so important is if I look anywhere else, if I look at your face directly, as an example in the Zoom, I'm not actually looking at you. It doesn't look like I'm paying attention to you. So I have to always look at the lens. So how do you do this? Because it's very weird. Because
Yeah.
in real life, you're looking at people directly in the eye. You put a post-it, okay, post-it note that just says look here, or you put something or someone you really love. Favorite actor, favorite actress, favorite food, wife, husband, put anything you want. You'll always look at the lens. That's another trick. So that's number one. Number two is get on a phone call with somebody in the audience that you know and imagine yourself presenting directly to them. So in my case, like yes, Friday, I gave a workshop for a big technology company and I didn't know 95% of the people on the call. There's 30 people in the call and I had to make it very interactive, which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
And stay energetic. So what do I do? Well, I knew three people on the call. So I just imagined that me and those three people were doing that exercise together. So getting on a phone call with an audience member before the actual meeting really helps because it helps you visualize the energy. And the third piece of advice is always up, not down. So what that means is always assume your energy levels are too low.
I see.
Always assume in virtual, always assume because it's very hard for you to bring out your like think even this podcast is a great example. Like I sound pretty excited to be here. Even if I'm alone, you're not there,
Yeah.
right? It's you're not here.
Yeah.
But the mindset I have is always default up. Always default up. So whenever I get tired, I'm like I'm alone in a basement right now. I just go, well, what car's right there? I know him. I've known him for a long time. And that's the mindset that I always approach conversations and any interaction I have virtually.
So why would you always assume that you have low energy? Is it like what is it? Is that the reality that most of us are not have low energy when we are remote because we don't have people around us, so we have to, kick it up a notch? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I see.
Of course, nothing I say in this podcast, and I think it's important for people to know this for any show, nothing we could ever say it could apply to 100% of a
Yeah.
population,
Yeah.
right? It's always the trick that you want to always pay attention to, especially if you're listening to this right now. It's not, I need to apply everything Brenden says, but rather, what are the 1 to 2 things that really works with me? Like random word exercise, something anyone can do. So to
Yeah.
your point, I would say, I've probably coached hundreds of people in my life now at this point. All of them. There isn't one person where I felt their energy levels were higher in virtual than in person. Not even, I don't think the number is 99%. I honestly think the number is 100%. There might have been 1 or 2 exceptions, but no. Or if there was a difference, it's very marginal. Like they're low both times, but on virtual they're just like a little bit higher, but still low in both
Interesting.
situation. And what I want to push also is even if you're introverted, doesn't mean you need to speak like me. It just means if you speak like this, if you're having a conversation like this is still impactful. I'd actually argue at this level, you're more accessible to a lot more people. Like think of Gary Vee because he's always loud all the time. Some people really like them, some people really don't.
Yeah.
But when you speak like this, everyone's accessible. I just choose to be more extroverted on podcasts because that's more my style.
Interesting. So when you speak at the lower energy level, you're more accessible to everyone, even people that have high energy by default. Is that
Yes.
interesting?
I'll give you a super easy example. And there's no science backed in this. It's more based on the way I teach it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just think about it. Like let's see you compare Gary Vaynerchuk
Mm-hmm.
with Seth Godin.
Hmm.
Nobody goes up to Seth Godin and says, I really hate Seth Godin.
Hmm.
Nobody says that. And feel free to
Yeah.
correct me. Do you know anyone who hates Seth Godin?
No, no, I don't.
But
Yeah.
Gary V, do you know people who hate Gary V?
Well, yeah, some
Right.
people like him and some people don't. Yeah.
Tony Robbins, same thing, just a lot less because he's
Hmm.
very loud.
Hmm.
You either like I'm a huge Gary V fan, huge Tony Robbins fan. They're great, but the opposite is also true. There's a lot of people who don't like them.
Hmm.
But Brene Brown, do you know anyone who says I hate Brene Brown?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Nobody says that.
Interesting. Interesting. So, would you now advise people who have a lot of energy to dial it down a bit so that they can be more accessible to everyone? I'm thinking of maybe somebody in sales, for example. A lot of extroverted people go into sales type roles. But so if that's your default, where you have just a lot of energy, would you advise maybe dialing it down a bit?
That's a beautiful question. So the answer is it really depends. And it depends on what are your outcomes. So if your goal is to be a thought leader, which I would assume is a very small percentage of this audience who are listening, then no, you wouldn't adapt your energy. You just do you because you have to communicate your truth in the way you do it. But if you're in corporate and your goal is to make more sales, your goal is to play politics, which is part of being in corporate, and building relationships with people so you can gain alliances, I would absolutely recommend that. You have to always adapt your energy to the person you're speaking to and to the outcome you want. And I do this too, by the way, on sales calls. So let's say I'm on a sales call with a client or a prospect and they're very introverted. I'm not going to yell at them for an hour. I'm going to say something like, talk to me more about your challenges. What are some ways to show? So notice I adapted. Whereas if someone's really, really loud on a call, I get really loud too because I'm naturally extroverted.
Yeah.
But the point I want to drive is depending on your outcome, I would say most of the time, you definitely want to adapt your energy to the person you're speaking to. And that applies for extroverts and introverts.
Okay. No, that makes total sense. I recall, hearing that advice. There's this thing called mirroring in communication. So you always want to mirror the other person's energy. Sometimes people say body language, but some people have different opinions because to some people that can come across as being fake. When you're always mirroring somebody's body language. But anyway, that's a different topic. But I just wanted to go back to the point that you made initially of if you find yourself in a virtual interview or in a virtual meeting, dial up your energy because a lot of times your energy will be low because you don't have people around you. What about if you're worried that you might come out to have a lot of energy, right? So because it can be quite uncomfortable if you have just too much energy, right? Because there are two extremes. Like there's low energy and then there's just way over the top, right? So what if you're worried that if you dial up your energy, you might just go all the way to the other side of the spectrum? What do you have to say about that?
One, I wouldn't overthink it. If you're gonna lose a couple of times, lose a couple of times. As long as you win in the mass, it doesn't matter. But the other piece is always remember extremes make you better in the means. So what does that mean? That means I always recommend practicing the extreme. So even with executives that I work with, I'm focused on making them speak like Tony Robbins, even if they're introverted. And the reason is because you want to feel that person's voice and you want to expand your skill set. So when you go back into corporate, your technique sounds a lot better. I'll give you a great example. Two executives, same content, different technique. So listen to this. Executive one sounds something like this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. Today, we're going to be discussing 5 key objectives for that meeting. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to just send me an email. And yeah, this meeting is probably going to last around 30, 35 minutes. So that's typical corporate meeting.
Yeah.
You just want to fall asleep. Half of them already asleep. Executive 2. I'm not telling you to motivate yourself or to follow your dreams. It just sounds something like this. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all having a great day. This meeting will last around 30 to 35 minutes. We have 5 key objectives for this meeting. So I'd love to defer to Raj and then defer to Julia about some of the topics that we have up for discussion today. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to send me an email. It'll be my pleasure to take a look at that and see any way that I can support you. Same thing, different technique. But you don't learn Executive 2's technique by just presenting in corporate. You learn that by investing in your communication outside of the boardroom. The boardroom is actually the worst place to practice your communication skills, in my opinion. You're always changing. Yeah, absolutely. You're always changing presentations. You're always stressed out. And you're not presenting something that you're super, super excited about.
Yeah.
Are you super excited about your status meeting? Maybe the first one, probably not the 50th one.
You gave 2 examples, executive 1 and executive 2. Now, just I could hear the difference, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how you did that, right? I mean, just I've also been practicing public speaking, so I do know what you did, but just for someone who's not aware, because just looking at your facial expression, nothing really changed. You seem normal, but what I was hearing was actually quite different. So one of them sounded a bit low energy, and the other one sounded, I heard the range, it was more dynamic. So how did you do that? Like, can you just maybe shed more light on what you did there?
Absolutely. And to be honest, there's no silver bullet here to just go from 1 to 2. The way you go from 1 to 2 is by practicing the random word exercise 1,000 times or 100 times or a few times a day. It's by practicing with a group of people. It's by getting feedback on how you're coming off as. There's so little number. Sorry, let me rephrase that. The number of people who go into corporate and speak and don't have other people giving them feedback on how they communicate is very, very high. Very little people are proactive about how to communicate better and how to push the boundaries of how to communicate their ideas with the world or in their boardrooms. So that's the other piece. So the transition from 1 to 2 is not a simple, if you follow these 3 steps, you'll absolutely get there. It's more a mindset around how can I push my technique and how can I make sure that every little thing that I say is perfectly tuned in to where it should be. But I'll break it down into 3 steps that aren't simple, but worth mentioning. So 1 is definitely the facial expression, right? If you don't look excited to be there, no one else will, right? Super simple. So if you don't look excited about your own meeting, why should anyone else care? That's number 1. Number 2 is the tonality of your voice, which is once again hard to teach. I have a whole video on this on my YouTube channel. I don't recommend that for beginners though. But vocal tonality is how do you come off as. So my voice used to be really aggressive and somebody told me to tone it down. So now my voice sounds like honey, right? So that's not born, that's practice. That's number 2. And then number 3 is empathy. Pay attention to the people in your boardroom. Don't waste their time. A lot of people don't prepare for meetings effectively. They just say their points instead of just going, okay, what does my audience already know? I'm not going to spend 10 minutes talking about the company. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes talking about a project that everyone's already informed about. So it's about being thoughtful about what should I prioritize as information in this meeting. That's another piece as well. There's 7 other things, but let's just keep these 3 to keep it simple.
No, interesting. So just on that, speaking at work, people are at various levels in the corporate world. Some people speak in the boardroom, some people speak, in at a lower level. What are your thoughts? So I know storytelling is a very, very important technique in speaking. It's a very engaging technique, and it's something that I'm working on getting better at. But what are your thoughts on using stories in the corporate world? Because I know many people will feel weird about telling a story. I mean, you're about to do a technical presentation, and it will be very weird to some people to start by saying, "Okay, let me tell you this story." So what are your thoughts on using storytelling in the corporate world?
Yeah, so I have a very different opinion on this than most people in my industry. which is I think anyone in corporate who hasn't done basic communication training, like random word, all that stuff, should not be telling stories.
Hmm.
If you're trying to, storytelling is one of the most complex elements of communication. Because what does storytelling even mean, Mukhtar? It doesn't mean watching Disney movies all day and taking notes. Does it mean walking you through a magical journey and how we're going to take this company to the next level? Like nobody really knows.
Hmm.
And that's the point. The priority for anyone who's listening is to work on your foundational skills, including you.
Hmm.
All of us should be doing that. I spend 80% of my time, even today, on the foundation. You know, it's a good analogy in basketball or any other sport where the pros don't focus on the alley-oops, don't focus on the special tricks. They focus on, am I dribbling the ball the right way? Am I tying my shoes on the right way? What kind of shoes am I wearing? How am I walking through the court? How can I run faster? They're focused on the basics. So focus on the basics first and don't overcomplicate it. So that means, because there's already a lot of tips that I've given to people. So you want to be sure to implement that first, right? Are you working on your random word? Are you practicing with other people? Are you working on your technique? And then when you get to storytelling, you can master that too.
Nice. I like that. So storytelling is more advanced. Start with your foundation, master that, and then you can move on. So yeah, it's always important to prioritize. I love that. So now switching gears a bit, what advice would you give to someone who has or who wants to reduce their public speaking anxiety before they go into a meeting, before they do a presentation, either reduce or eliminate? What advice do you have for that person?
Right. So let's start with the first one. Elimination is not possible. I'm still stressed. I was stressed on Friday giving a presentation to this company because if I didn't do well, I wouldn't get hired again. This is my first one. It was a big deal. I really wanted to make sure I did a good job. And luckily I did. But the point is, like, nerves are all for all of us, even if it's small. So here's the better way of thinking about nerves. Think of it like a boxing match. Okay. So on one side of the ring, you have the fear. What are people going to think of me? What's going to happen? And the other side of the ring is your message. The fear will always be in that corner. Will always be in the ring. But as long as your message gets the knockout punch and wins, then you're good. So what's the punchline? The punchline is the best communicators on the planet aren't fearless, but are fearful that their message won't resonate with their audiences. Okay, let me repeat that again. The best speakers in the world are not fearless, but rather fearful of what happens if they do a bad job in front of their audience. So they work so bloody hard on their message that it outweighs, the message becomes more important than the fear itself. So the fear loses every time. Same thing with me. I mean, I'm probably the best example of this. I started MasterTalk and coaching CEOs when I was 22, Car.
Wow.
How does that make any sense? Some of the individuals I coach today, okay, not today, but 3 years ago when I started, had more experience in their company than I've been alive.
Wow.
Imagine the imposter syndrome. Imagine the stress. Same thing when I was a kid. I grew up in Montreal and my parents put me in a French school. So I had to learn French. But the problem is, not only was I uncomfortable with presentations, I had to present them in a language I didn't know. So I would walk up in grade 1 and go, bonjour. It was horrible at communication. So how did I build up the courage and the confidence to deliver anyways? To say it doesn't matter if these people have PhDs. I can do a good job too. I can still share my ideas because I understood who I was doing it for. I wasn't doing it for the executives, and I'm still not doing it for the executives, though they're all amazing clients of mine. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the 15-year-old girl who can't afford a speech coach. Nobody's making videos for her. So it's either Brenden makes videos or nobody makes videos. So when you're faced with that type of option, I'm still scared. I'm still worried about how other people think of me, but the message is just way more important. And when you get into that place with your companies and your organizations, it changes from I'm scared of communication to wait a second, my teammates are relying on me as the leader of this group to deliver a message. Does that matter more or the fear that's associated with it? people need to make a decision now. So I hope you make the right one.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Because instead of when you have fear, it's sort of internally focused. You're focused on yourself, but when you're focused on the message, you're focused on something other than yourself. So I really like that, and I find that when I do that, that's quite helpful, right? So especially if it's something that you really care about, it's like it's not really about me. I'm just the messenger here, right? And I'm sort of the conduit through which this message is being delivered. So I like that. I think that's very good advice. All right. So just I think now we are coming towards the end of the interview. How can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely, man. The best way to get in touch with me is definitely the YouTube channel. All you got to do is type MasterTalk in one word on YouTube, and you'll find me and my contact information there.
Nice. So this was very informative, Brenden. I really liked having you. I think you dropped a lot of gems. I'll be sure to watch this over and over again and do my random word exercises 5 times a day, so that I can be I can be in tip-top shape when it comes to communication. So thank you very much, Brenden, for being here, and I really, really appreciate you coming over.
Pleasure was mine.